Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this regular board meeting on April 27th, and we apologize for the delay. We'll have a roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Chow?
Here.
Ms. Cartha? Here. Ms. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Rickus?
Here.
Ms. Quattrocki?
Here. And Katie has the approval of the agenda tonight.
I moved the Board of Education. Oh, that's not it. That was my previous agenda item. Okay, I moved the board approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Chow?
Yes.
Ms. Cartha?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rickus?
Yes.
Ms. Quattrocki?
Yes, motion passes 6-0. We'll begin with our formal presentation from the public, and our first speaker is Ann Brown. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. You can come right up here to the podium.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Ann Brown, and I'm a parent of a kindergarten student at Kingsley Elementary School. I learned recently that the one assistant principal in the district being eliminated for the 2015-2016 school year as part of broader district-wide budget cuts was the assistant principal of Kingsley Elementary School, and I'm deeply concerned about this decision. I'm not alone in my concern. I wonder if those from Kingsley would stand up, please. Thank you. And there are many parents who can't be here tonight who wish to be. Since last Thursday, 74 Kingsley parents have completed a survey about the budget cuts in the district and their impact on Kingsley Elementary School. 94% of respondents expressed concern about the elimination of the AP position, with 68% expressing extreme concern. 85% of respondents rated the AP role at Kingsley as providing a lot or a great deal of value or impact. 79% of respondents said alternative budget cuts should be considered rather than the elimination of Kingsley's AP. 93% of respondents said it was important to be able to provide input on proposed budget cuts at Kingsley. Comments throughout the survey revealed that Kingsley parents, by and large, do not believe that they had opportunities for input into this important decision that impacts our school, and wish for greater transparency and communication about the budget cuts and other issues impacting our school. And I wish to state in that I read the email from Dr. Gorin listing out the budget cuts, but it didn't hit home, and this, my fault, didn't hit home until I found out that it was my assistant principal serving our elementary school. So that data about not only what cuts are being made, but what schools they impact and how that is divided across the district is incredibly important to parents. So why does the elimination of the Kingsley assistant principal matter to me? Kingsley serves a large number of low-income and minority students, along with more affluent students. I have been thrilled this year at what a great, welcoming, positive, and inclusive culture has been created at Kingsley, and the assistant principal has been pivotal in creating and maintaining this climate. He has been extremely visible in the school and involved with all children and families. I'm also aware that he has a significant role in discipline and PBIS, and plays an important role in supporting students and teachers by addressing behavior directly with students. Mr. Scarf in particular has been valuable in this role as a man who can relate to students, many of whom need positive interaction from males. I'm concerned that without Mr. Scarf or the AP position in the school, that the principal will have an overwhelming responsibility on top of her, and that there will be increased pressure on the principal and teachers, and that some of our most vulnerable students will fall through the cracks. So I implore you to reconsider this decision and to not eliminate the position for next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to let you know that we will be responding, Dr. Warren will have a response at the end of our public commentary, but we don't respond one by one. So our next speaker is Elizabeth Schaefer.
Oh,
I'm
Oh.
reading Elizabeth's comment. Sorry. Elizabeth couldn't be here tonight and asked me to read this letter. Dear District 65 leaders, my son Tony, age 7, is a Kingsley student. Tony and I recently moved out of the Kingsley School District and we now reside in the Washington School District. 2 months ago, I submitted my request to the district that Tony receive a permissive transfer so that he may continue his elementary education at Kingsley. Why? Because of our beloved assistant principal, Mr. Scarf. Mr. Scarf is at the heart of the Kingsley family, my son's family. You see, Tony is fatherless and recently lost his only granddaddy. In Kingsley, through the very, very few male staff members there are only 3 male teachers in the entire school. Tony has found his family, of which Mr. Scarf is a member. But Mr. Scarf is not only a member of my son's family, he is a member of all Kingsley students' families. Please consider the rough, all too common abusive fathers that so many children sadly have at home. Please consider the tragically common lack of fathers at home realities. Please consider the genuine need our young children, boys and girls, have in seeing that men can be strong, men can love children, men can be kind, men can be part of the Kingsley family, men can be good, men can be there. In the industry of elementary education, there is an enormous lack of male staff members. Our boys need male role models in their school. Please do not take away their role model. We parents ask, please, to consider not firing Mr. Scarf from Kingsley School. Please do not take away Mr. Scarf's exceptional, eternal, cheerful presence in our children's halls. They are empty without his happy, kind, involved presence. Not only does he care about our children, but our children know he cares. This is so, so important to their emotional well-being. Mr. Scarf literally has a smile for every child. You meet some exceptional people in life, people who are good, wise, kind, and unwaveringly committed to their professions. Mr. Scarf is one of those unique individuals. Yes, we are pleading, but with purely the kindest, best intentions. Do not take Mr. Scarf away from our children. Thank you, Elizabeth Schaefer, Tony's mom.
Thank you. James Davis is next.
Seems like a tough act to follow. James Davis, I've got 2 children at Kingsley, one in 4th grade, one in 1st grade, and I have another one who'll be there in 2 or 3 years. I should probably know that. I'd certainly echo some of the comments that have already been made, but I'd also add, I've had a child in the school in the previous administration. I think the assistant principal has added enormously to the experience my children have had and lots of other children have had. And I think we also need to acknowledge the principal as a big part of that as well, but we're here to talk about the decision you've all made regarding the assistant principal. For me personally, it's important because I've seen my son experience some of the disruptive effects that behavioural problems bring. Not that my son is necessarily the root cause of that, but in the previous administration there wasn't resources there to help manage that. Mr. Scarf has been integral in managing that. I certainly echo the comments as well that he's had a huge positive role model effect. I love the fact he's helped launch the Math Olympiad program this year. My son's enjoyed that. I've enjoyed helping with that. Certainly when I'm in the school, I see him there and I see the way the kids interact with him. I see the way he interacts with the principal. It's a hugely positive effect for the school. And I find it hard to understand why Kingsley is the one who's chosen to lose that role. I can't believe that our needs are any less than other schools. I would also add that I'm concerned about some of the things I hear about the literacy program, and I'd be interested to hear more about that as to what's actually happening in that regard, because some of the things that we're hearing, and I recognise it's rumour mill, but that's all we have. We don't have good communication from you guys. It sounds like we're having trained expert literacy leaders replaced by people we don't know or who aren't experts in the subject. I cannot believe that that is the benefit of my children and the other children across the district. I've seen it very clearly with my son, who went through a phase where we had a horrible teacher at one point, and his reading really suffered. And the reading program intervened, and we're fortunate he's a good reader. He was helped to be challenged and to be enjoying coming to school with him and enjoying reading. And I see that today. I see kids that are below average, who are on target, who are above average, who are benefiting from the current literacy program. I struggle to see what the need is for dramatic change, and what we hear, because all we have is our rumours, is that it feels like there's significant change coming. It's not obvious why we're having them. That, however, feels like a sort of secondary point. So back to our point about the assistant principal, I would certainly wish to encourage you all to look again at how you communicate. I did pick up on I didn't pick up on the nuance. I contacted you directly, Mr. Garnabak. So is this affecting my school? Turned out it was. But nobody knew that. We shouldn't have to do that. It doesn't feel like you engaged our principals in the conversation. Why don't we involve the people who run the schools, the PTA as well? Shouldn't they be trusted to have a say in this process? Doesn't seem like that's happened, and that's gone. But we have a chance to revisit that and make smart, better decisions. So I'd urge you to reconsider and look at if there are alternative ways of sharing resources, perhaps, if that's what it comes to. I don't think the one day from Haven is enough. It's a nice idea, but maybe there needs to be alternative ways of looking at how we say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kara Sherman.
Good evening. I'm Kara Sherman, and I'm speaking on behalf of Lincoln Elementary PTA. Even though Peter is not here tonight, sadly, we want to thank him for a truly impressive analysis, and thank the board and administration for continuing to address Lincoln's challenges with such thoughtfulness. We recognize that there's no easy solution and feel that the recommendation based on the survey for the coming year is the best option given the circumstances. That said, we remain very concerned about the adverse effect that these recommendations will have on our school. Already, the school is overcrowded, and the possibility of adding more children to already congested classrooms and common spaces is quite daunting. As the parent survey showed, the greatest concerns of both parents and teachers are for the safety of the children and for their academic progress. When we strive for differentiation with the goal of helping each child reach their individual potential, we feel it's essential that the board recognize that the bigger the classroom, the more difficult it is for each teacher to achieve those goals. We look forward to working with the district administration in the coming months to ensure that our children are having experiences that are comparable to the others in the district who attend schools with smaller class sizes. We understand that the district is facing a deficit, but we hope that serious consideration will be given to adding staffing where it's most needed in the areas at Lincoln. This might include teacher aides or student teachers, but more importantly, front office support and also additional crossing guards. We also will continue to work with the principals, the district, and city officials to see if there's a way to reduce the street congestion and the dangers it poses during drop-off and pickup. Already in the lunchroom, we've seen the positive impact creative problem solving can have, and we thank Ms. Cooney and Ms. Treyback for their leadership in this area, which has been quite amazing. We kindly ask that the administration keep the parent community posted on the leadership plans for the crucial summer period during this enrollment process and what you all are already aware of at our school this past academic year. So we really appreciate your thoughtfulness and communication to the parent community about the leadership in that role and also this really crucial period during the summer. Last but not least, we hope that efforts are underway to proactively address the challenges we believe Nichols will be facing in short time as our large population feeds into that middle school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tessa, and I apologize if I
No, Tessa Vides.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening, Tessa Vides. I am also a parent at Kingsley talking to you tonight, and I'm sharing the voice of many Kingsley parents who have come to me regarding the recent budget cuts and their impact on our school. Specifically, we have grave concerns over the process, the result, and our recourse. First, we understand managing budgets and would only advocate for responsible financial keeping. We are not here to sound off on budgets being cut and understand the tough task you have in front of you. At the same time, however, many parents feel that while we are promised transparency and data-driven decision-making, that this has not been supported in this scenario. To be good partners and adequately provide parents' perspective into key decisions, we need information, data, and notice. This administration committed to transparency, and to achieve that goal, information must be delivered in a clear, specific, and timely manner. Weeks after decisions were made, I stand before you still asking, what data supports cutting where you did, and why were district parents as a whole, and Kingsley parents more specifically, not kept better informed as it relates to cuts directly impacting our children? Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, we disagree with the target of such cuts. I spend a great deal of time at Kingsley volunteering in and out of the classroom and see firsthand the impact that the AP has on the school. The principal is able to be strategic and the teachers are able to focus their efforts on learning rather than disciplinary issues. The AP position is not nice to have at Kingsley. It is essential to the everyday learning experience of our children. Our school population needs the attention of an AP in order for the kids to get a successful education. We sincerely hope the decision wasn't based on last hired or simply enrollment numbers, rather than what is best for a specific population with specific needs. We understand the need to make cuts, but we can't agree that the elimination of the AP position was the only choice. Again, we would like to know the logic and data that supports this. Finally, where do we go from here? Kingsley has made great strides in the last 2 years under the leadership of Ms. Murray and her assistant principals. But let's be clear, and we would all agree, I'm sure, that the assistant principals have been critical to this turnaround. I do not accept that Kingsley will be left to take a giant step backwards. We cannot be happy and settled with this result. We are happy to contribute to the thinking around how else we can meet these budget needs, but the elimination of the AP position at Kingsley is not a prudent choice. Thank you for your time tonight. I know we all share the same goals of providing a tremendous education environment for our children and look forward to your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who's come out tonight to speak and to listen, and for you all to know that we truly appreciate hearing from the public. It helps us do our job. And now we've asked Dr. Gorin to respond to some of the budget concerns.
Thank you, and thank you one and all for coming out and for the emails that I've received and the commentary over the last couple days and week. I hear you as well, and I take very seriously the concerns and the critique about clear communication, about the impact at the school level, about the process and the results. And so that's a piece of feedback that I take full responsibility for. And so as the communication has come out and didn't meet your needs as community members and as neighbors, that responsibility rests with me. And so I want to just acknowledge that and say that as we move forward and as we think not only about how we address some of the issues and the concerns at Kingsley, but across the district, that we take your advice and counsel with full sincerity. I also have received many heartfelt commentaries like the one that was read on behalf of Ms. Schaefer. And so we take that very seriously too, that we have to pay attention to the needs of our children, all the children at Kingsley, all the children across the district. And so again, as I frame some of the issues that I've already framed, in some ways, just know that as we absorb the critique and the comments that we have, that the how we address the concerns that you have at Kingsley and that we have across the district is actually really important. Just want to make sure I think those were a couple of the highlights that I wanted to say first. Let me, if I may, just state at the macro level what the district is facing. Some of this information I've already sent out in the emails that I've sent out, and then the micro issues at Kingsley that we're listening to tonight, that I've heard and I continue to hear, and as we work with Ms. Murray and as we move forward, how we move forward. Just at the district level, and again, this has been covered in the local press, and it's covered in some of the commentary that I've at least written out, that between, if we made no reductions at all, so this is not only Kingsley, but across the district, we made no reductions at all. In 15-16, we'd have a $400,000 deficit, and by 19-20, by the year 2019-2020, we'd have a $7.2 million deficit. This is a $100 million budget. And again, at the macro level, about 85% of our costs are people. And so that becomes a constraint set that I have to face. All of that, the range from $400,000 in deficit to the potential of $7.2 million in deficit over a 5-year period, is before there's any change from the state of Illinois. There's pending legislation right now that potentially can work towards equalizing funding across the state of Illinois. And the Evanston Skokie Public Schools, our district would be potentially hit at about $6.5 million. Again, that hasn't passed yet. That's a piece at the legislative level. And then any adjustments that the legislature and the governor may take to the support of the public services across the state, including our services, are not accounted for in this piece. So the clarion call for me as a chief administrator has been to pay attention to those resources and then to make the best and most prudent changes that we can, with full respect to the concerns that you are indeed raising. And by the way, Ms. Brown, I'd love the data. If that's shareable, I'd love the data from the survey. That's I appreciate the speaking to us, and I appreciate the speaking via the data, so that we can at least see that as we move forward. So when we entered into, and these were some of our guiding principles around how do we actually think about reductions and proposing reductions to the Board of Education members and proposing reductions to the community. We had a couple guiding principles. One was that we would sustain our class sizes at the level that they're at. And then those are pieces that all of us who have sent our kids to school here in Evanston and Skokie, like I have and you have, cherished very much. So sustaining class sizes, which also means no reduction of a classroom teacher, was a guiding principle. Second one was no reduction or change to arts and specials, and we've done that before. We already received feedback and concerns, and I know in the Kingsley community as well as everywhere else, and in the Lincoln community. Thank you for those comments as well. It's the same piece around our arts specialists across the fine arts who work on 4-day schedules rather than 5-day schedules. So class size sustained, no changes to the arts and the specials, no changes to athletics and after-school programs. So that also is a guiding principle as we move forward. So that's piece one. Piece two is how much could we do outside of having an impact in the classroom or in the related classroom services, and I'll come back to the reading specialists and our at least our rationale behind that. In fiscal year 13, in 2012-13, we made $4.3 million of reductions. So that was my predecessors made $4.3 million of reductions. About 48 full-time equivalent staff that mostly focused in the central administration, so whether it was in this building or in our warehouse or through our custodial staff, et cetera. So that's central services that were really important, are important, but in making a judgment call, we went to, and our colleagues who preceded us went and did those reductions several years ago. The reductions that we proposed and move forward on with the board include 10.5 central office positions, the reading specialists 6.75, 6 special education TAs, and 5.8 building staff, to which the Kingsley assistant principal was embedded in that. My lesson learned is to put a line out in the public that says 5.8 building staff and doesn't say, and that will be the Kingsley assistant principal, was wrong. And so that is one of the pieces that I need to make my own improvements on in terms of being specific, being as engaged as possible, and to be very specific so we can have the debate we're having tonight, and discussion, and engagement, and engaged voices of the community, but so that we can be very specific. So that again, I also take full responsibility for. On the reductions of the special education teacher assistants, and again, the gentleman, Mr. Davis, who just spoke, brought in the concerns about the reading specialists and the special education services as well. The 6 positions that we've reduced we're reducing by either attrition or by positions that have not been filled this year. Now, those positions in the budget, as we're doing budget planning, will indeed be reduced. That said, we are committed to our special education services, and we're obligated by our special education services, so that when we have an IEP and when it calls for the type of support that is needed, we will fulfill that obligation. That is not shying away from that. In terms of the reading specialists, again, at the macro level of the district, we have 36.25 full-time equivalents who are experts who are expert reading specialists or coaches, 36.25 this year, and we have 4.5 mathematics specialists and coaches, and I think there's a consultant that's woven in there. So there's a discrepancy between the services that we provide, along with our classroom teachers, between our mathematics and our reading specialists. Our intent is to reduce down to 29.5 reading specialists and coaches across the district and maintain the 4.5 mathematics, so to keep stay the course in the mathematics, and then to redeploy our services as it relates to the specialists who are reading specialists. Indeed, let me segue into Kingsley, the impact on Kingsley. The reduced assistant principal is what we're talking about tonight. We know that in the current state, we have 2 full-time equivalent reading specialists at Kingsley. We will maintain 2 full-time equivalent reading specialists at Kingsley. Now, those are translated out into several different people, but the full-time equivalents, we're not pulling away from Kingsley at all in terms of the reading specialists. We also have 1.5 social workers who are assigned to Kingsley, and we're going to maintain 1.5 social workers there. We mentioned, and one of you mentioned the ability to assign one of our Haven assistant principals to assist Ms. Murray as we move forward, and so that's part of our action plan. We're also redesigning the special needs class that was one of the original, from what I can tell, was one of the original reasons to actually have an assistant principal, given some of the behavior issues and concerns that the community had. And part of the redesign and actually the graduation of the students who are in the current class will lessen a bit, not completely, but lessen a bit the concentration of children who express and have behavior issues and concerns that indeed the assistant principal was and is addressing. We believe fully in Miss Murray, and I know that you all do too. I've heard that from many of you. She's a solid leader, and in the rationale for where do we make the reductions as it relates to staff at the school level. Part of this, and again, this may sound contradictory, and I appreciate that concern, was that with solid leadership, with the shift in the way we're going to provide the special needs class in the building, that we could make the shift and invest even more in Miss Murray, along with the assistance from Haven. That said, that runs contradictory to what several of you have expressed tonight, that I'm sure is embedded in the data, and I know is embedded in the work that the comments that I've received over time. These are, I don't know how else to say it, these are tough economic times, and there's such uncertainty, and by no means are we, or am I, trying to pinpoint one school over another school, and indeed the shift in the reading specialists is another place where there's an impact across the district. This initial foray into budget reductions was an attempt, or is an attempt, to move forward on balancing for next year and being prepared as the state and as the governor, as the legislature may make changes with us. Let me turn to my colleagues. Have I covered everything that? Get the covers. So that is where we're at today. We take your commentary upon advice, and we will be working together as a board and administration as we move forward.
Thank you very much. You had a district update as well.
I do. I have a couple other updates, if I may. On the district update, and this is a couple things that I wanted to bring forward. One was embedded in our package tonight is a suspension report, an update. And I just want to highlight this. It's in the information section that we've really made some tremendous progress on changing the motif of how we actually pay attention to kids and young people who are having problems, and how we actually embrace children and work to keep children in school as opposed to suspending them out of school. So we've decreased our suspension days in this report from 451 suspension days to 180 days. And there's almost every school is down in its suspension rates as we work towards programs like Alternatives to Suspension, as we work with our social workers and our psychologists and our principals to move forward. And we've had what is close to over an 85% decrease in suspensions from this time last year. Is that at the elementary school level? And so I just wanted to highlight that as a point that's embedded in here as one piece. A second update is I'm hoping that people saw the really wonderful article in the Tribune yesterday. And front page there was a story about Haven, and about a young man who's a student who is a transgender student who has engaged, and the school has engaged in a collaborative and an open process to really accept and move forward in a very natural way this young man in the school environment. It's a lovely story, not only about Evanston and about Haven, but about schools around the state that are really doing the type of practices that are really embracing all children regardless, and really including who they are as they come to school. I want to just publicly thank the teachers, Kathy Roberson, the principal at Haven, the counselors who have done a wonderful job, and I commend you to read the article in the Tribune. Final update is that we have a conversation going on tomorrow night about disciplinary literacy in District 65. This is sponsored and co-hosted by District 65 and the PTA Council. It's tomorrow evening at the Chute Middle School Library. Chute is at 1400 Oakton Street from 7 p.m. to 8:30. We'll be covering issues like what is disciplinary literacy, what will be its impact in 65, how will the disciplinary literacy program reflect changes from the Common Core state standards, and what does this mean for parents and family members who are working with their children and working within these new standards. So that's my update. I wanted to bring up one more piece, which is on the amended agenda, or on the agenda that was approved tonight, on a program called Innovations for Learning, because this was a program that was approved a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to be very clear on what this program is and what this and how we're moving forward. Innovations for Learning is a Evanston-based nonprofit that has a technology-based platform that focuses on helping young people learn how to read better and how to focus on their reading. We actually received a grant from the IFL, from the Innovations for Learning colleagues. They raised their own resources through their own methods of fundraising, and are actually combining that with their own resources to provide a grant to work in 3 of our schools. And those schools are Washington, Oakton, and King. And the generous contribution that we've received from them does not include any matching fund or any resources from the district. So I know in some of the conversations about the reduction of the reading specialists, there were concerns that we were reducing reading specialists and then using the resources for this program. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. I also want to be quite candid that I served as an advisor to Innovations for Learning over several years as an unpaid, uncompensated advisor. I'm no longer in that capacity, but I did serve in my professional role in that way. And again, I want to stress that this is an opportunity for us to take advantage of generous grant from an Evanston-based organization to move forward. And indeed, their generosity is something that we appreciate, and we've been not involved at all in the fundraising that they've done. And so I just wanted to clarify that if there were questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We're now moved on to board communications. Does anyone have, Richard?
I do. I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Gorin for sharing what you did about the budget. And I just wanted to thank everyone who wrote and showed up. We know that you're away from your families right now, and we do hear you. And I would encourage a couple of things. One is, as Dr. Gorin said, the budget is in pretty serious condition, not positively. And for the last several years, we have made cuts in various areas. And most of those cuts probably didn't impact people in the ways that we're starting to see, because we have trimmed so much for so many years. And in fact, we've asked Dr. Brown to put together a summary of what are the types of cuts that have been made over the last several years. This year was difficult, and it's not going to get easier, especially with some of what's going on at the state level on top of what's going on at the local level. So I did want to mention two things. One is I encourage you to stay tuned very closely. You can watch the Finance Committee meetings. They are on TV. We always post the agendas. You can watch those on demand too when you're at the treadmill at the health club. I see that more often than I would normally think. And obviously the board meetings. We're going to be having a lot of conversations about our budget over the next several months. The second is something that the board has worked with the administration on, and it was announced at the last Finance Committee meeting, which is a finance task force, which we had about 3.5 years ago. And they provided some insights, some of which were acted upon. And I think we are going to be taking a deeper dive to really look for even more creative ways to try and cope with the deficits that we're facing. And I would encourage you to send your ideas, your people who are on the ground and see things across the district. If you have ideas that you think should be considered as we look to try and trim, share those ideas with us, because we don't think we have all the answers, but we're certainly willing to listen. So please do that as you see fit. And that's it.
Thank you, Richard. That's helpful. Any other comments?
I had one comment just to piggyback on what Dr. Gorin had said relative to the disciplinary results, because I see many people in this audience, I'm a Kingsley parent, I see many people in this audience who sat probably 3 years ago now at one of our first courageous conversations at Kingsley, and we talked about what we perceived to be disproportionate kind of suspensions and ODRs for some kids, particularly Black students. And we talked about some of the concerns we had. And I know the same conversation was happening at many other schools. And so I want to thank you not only for coming out tonight, but for being there as well, because as you just heard, and if you drill into that data in the packet even more so, we've had a 64% reduction for suspensions of Black students. That means in the last year, we've recovered a year's worth of instruction for Black students. And across the board, the 83%, which affects all students. These are the types of changes that we could not make without the type of advocacy that you're doing tonight and that you did in the room over at Kingsley 2 years ago. And it's important for you to know the part that you play in that, and that you're not only being heard, but there are changes that are being made that are going to impact and improve the lives of our kids. And so I wanted to reinforce that, because I see Sarah, and I know she was in the room, and I see Sue, and I see a number of people, Brenda back there, I see a number of you who were in that room several years ago. And this is a really dramatic and significant move forward for our district that we're going to see benefits from. And I think we can't talk about it enough. It's hard to juxtaposition it to this very difficult conversation, obviously, that we're having. And I'm sorry for that, but I did want to make sure that we thank you for being active then and thank you for being active now, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, this concludes our commentary, and we'll move on to our proposed action items, and maybe you first motion.
I move the Board of Education accept the recommendations outlined in the attached group motion and approve the personnel appointments, leaves, retirements, separations. Do I have to read all these? I don't want to. March 2015 Board of Education and Finance Committee meeting minutes. March 2013 destruction of closed session audio recordings. February 2015 list of bills, school treasurer reports, and budget amendments. The gift acceptances for Dewey. The summer 2015 building use agreement. The bus bid for fiscal year 2016 through 2018. Summer learning projects and the Lincoln School enrollment management recommendations for 2015-2016.
Second?
Second.
Yeah, and I want to make a motion to amend. The bus bid should be a bus bid rejection.
I think that, isn't the
Is that?
I believe the recommendation is written that way, but we
is.
just wanted to be clear that
Okay.
what you're approving is the rejection of the bus
Okay.
bids. We are going out for bid in hopes to get more competitive pricing, so that
Right.
is the bus bid rejection.
No need to amend then.
but I wasn't about that.
Thank you.
Just want to be clear.
So now can you second it?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Chow?
Yes.
Ms. Cartha? Yes. Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rickes?
Yes.
Ms. Quattrocki?
Yes, the motion passes 6-0. Now our first non-consent agenda approval item is the approval of the school calendar for the year 2015-16. Katie?
I move the Board of Education approve the 2015-2016 school year calendar as presented for the Skokie Evanston School District 65.
We're going to do a
Second.
brief presentation of what it is, or just questions from the packet. Do you ever have any questions?
If there are questions, I'm happy to take questions regarding the 15-16 calendar.
Anyone? Suni?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
About the
questions on the calendar.
I just have one question, and I don't remember if we already talked about this, but November 11th, Veterans Day. Do we have to make that a non-attendance day? Even for next year, or would we have to hold like a public hearing? What was the?
Well, one of the things we were trying to do is within the calendar alignment was to align our calendars with District 202.
Oh, 202.
And that is a date that District
Okay.
202 stands very firmly on having as a non-attendance day. I think if we wanted to consider it moving forward for the 16-17
Okay.
school year, we certainly could. But the way this calendar has been brought forward to you is very much aligned with the District 202
Okay.
calendar for the 15-16 school year.
Thank you.
Which is very appreciated, the work on the joint committee to align the two calendars.
Very much so. I did just want to make an observation, and I'll, support the calendar because of all the conversations we've had leading up to this. I did something that I haven't done before, and that is I counted the number of 5-day attendance weeks we have in the school year, and I was really surprised. So from the end of August through up until winter break, we have 7 full weeks of school, 5-day weeks. And in the whole school year, I counted for students 19 full weeks of school. And that just struck me as low. It just surprised me. And I know that you're doing work on this joint committee now. I don't know what the solutions are. I don't know if it's a problem. How's that? It struck me, though, as lower than I would have expected. So I would just ask that as you are having conversations in the committee, to look at, is this presenting some challenges that we may not have considered before? And when you come back to us with the next calendar recommendation, to share the committee's thinking on that.
Which will be next week, won't it?
Was that next week already?
I think it's on the 4th.
So on the 4th, what we were planning to bring forward was the survey data for you to review. The survey closed, I believe it was midnight last Wednesday. We had a large number of people participating in the survey, which was wonderful. We got some great information. The committee actually just met today, so it was the first time we had an opportunity to kind of look through it. So ideally, we would have as well some draft options for you to consider, which we're going to work really hard to get that piece in as well. The next committee meeting we actually have is after the fact, but based on the committee meeting today and some of the information we've received, we're going to try and have some drafts and then take your consideration as well and meet again and have that final draft calendar for approval at the end of May.
Will you meet with the joint committee before that time?
Yes.
Okay. Good to hear. Any other questions? All right, shall we have a roll call?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Chow?
Yes.
Ms. Cartha?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rickes?
Yes.
Ms. Quattrocki?
Yes, the motion passes 6-0. And now we're on to our first discussion item, the Evanston Community School Initiative. Missy Carpenter and Seth Green. And then I'd also like to acknowledge Candace and Katie, who've worked alongside as the board liaisons to the Community Schools Initiative.
Lieutenant, okay. Sure.
Welcome everyone, and turn it over to Missy.
Sure. Hi, I'm Missy Carpenter. I'm the Director of Community Schools at YOU. Is this as echoey as it sounds, or am I?
Yes.
Okay. Let me try to stand back, and then if you can't hear me, let me know. So just to kind of quick bring us to where we are, you might remember that about 2 years ago, we came to the board with a similar presentation to share an idea for developing community schools in Evanston. And the idea was that YOU would partner with Shoot to pilot a 3-year pilot of a community school model, and also to start to sort of imagine what an Evanston Community Schools initiative might look like beyond Shoot. So now we're 2 years in, and we're here today to do two things mainly. One is to sort of share the exciting progress of what's been going on at Shoot, and also some of the things we've learned in the first 2 of the 3 years of the pilot. And also to just kind of share about what we've been doing on thinking of that larger sort of initiative, and where we hope to go in the future with your support. So let me just quickly introduce who's at the table. So I'll start at the far end, hopefully I can see everyone. So we have Diane Lacroix from Foundation 65. We have Casey Lewis-Varela from YMCA. We have Teresa Quinn, school social worker at Shoot. James McCollin, principal at Shoot. Liz Avery Hart, a parent and Parents on a Mission leader at Shoot. Shannon Watson, also a parent at Shoot and Parents on a Mission leader. And Seth Green, the executive director of YOU. So beyond the fact that community schools are a highly collaborative system, the other reason you see a lot of people here before you is that there has been a leadership council that's come together over the past year to do this sort of exploring and imagining of a multi-site sort of community school initiative. And so that includes YOU, District 65, Foundation 65, United Way, YMCA, and Family Focus. So just so you kind of know who's been working on this work together. So I'll just quickly share, is there a clicker here for these, for the, sorry. Thank you.
feels appropriate for kind of STEM to be using the technology tonight.
Now if I can live up to that and actually push the right button. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You're good, okay. There we go. So our first sort of task as a leadership council was to really identify the challenge that community schools are meant to solve in Evanston. This is sort of a shortened version, but in your packets you saw a larger version, sort of more robust. But in essence, what we're trying to address is that there are great disparities in achievement for young people, driven specifically by inequities in access to supports among families in Evanston. And our vision is really that through deep and sustained focus on relationship and community building, that community schools can build a sense of belonging and connectedness that will break down barriers to opportunities, and that ultimately community schools improve outcomes for young people. So really the hope is, the vision here is that the sense of belonging and connectedness that breaks down the barriers happens with a focus on building a culture of belonging beyond the school day, beyond the school doors, really building the school as a hub of community resources, and really getting to that access and ownership of all stakeholders in what's happening in the school community. And ultimately, sort of high level, the goals that we've set out for the Community School Initiative is that in each community school, the initiative will provide equitable access to resources for mental, emotional, social, and physical health and well-being for youth and their families, to tailored social and educational services for families and community members, including efforts serving needs across the age spectrum, and access to enrichment and youth development opportunities, so that ultimately we can promote well-rounded success of young people, strong families, and thriving communities. So that's really what we're setting out to do. Seth's going to talk a little bit about how we do it.
Thank you, Missy. Up there you see a vision, and at the bottom is really what we've been working toward. We have been bringing together incredible parents, who you'll hear from, and building this representative group of stakeholders to really fill in a community school action team. And that group sets out a clear vision of here are needs, and here's the ownership we want to provide to try to coordinate resources through our school in a way that makes it a vibrant hub. And if you look up, you see that there is a community school manager, a staff person, whose job it is to really facilitate those relationships and begin building those partnerships. And then at the top, you see that those are coordinated partnerships for impact. And we'll hear about examples from Shoot, and so I'll just whet your appetite by saying that they really make the school a vibrant place, as well as provide direct impact to youth and families. In terms of what a community school achieves, you see up there an example community school logic model. The reason that you don't see up there Shoot's logic model or the ECSI logic model is because that is what's being developed right now. As we've built representative parent leadership and as we've built belonging among the different agencies in town, we're now looking to how do we build a logic model that shows for our community what the outcomes should look like. When you look in the literature, what you see is that there were 3 initial set of indicators that we are focused on for the first 2 pilot years. And now that those are underway, we're moving toward the broader initiative. Those 3 areas are parent leadership, and you'll see the data from Shoot, the aligned systems and infrastructure, and then expanded partnerships for impact. And again, I know you're not hearing about all those examples, but that's because there are much better storytellers than me on this panel to do so. So just having kind of given a brief snapshot of what you'll hear about in terms of the solution that community school provides, I just want to connect it to the District 65 strategic plan that was recently embraced. We believe that it relates especially to 2 of the 5 areas. The safe and supportive school climate, and you'll hear about how, but at the highest level, this whole child council really is about how you wrap around. And at its core, community schools is about how you engage all the right stakeholders in owning the relationships and the social capital so that you can develop these partnerships for the whole child and the whole family and the whole community at the same time. It is a micro-collective impact for the whole child. It also builds trust, and I'll defer to my colleagues, but just say that I have been amazed as a leader at YOU who has seen school-parent interactions and the very real challenges they provide sometimes, even when both the parent and the principal really, really care deeply and are trying so hard. And it's amazing to me that as this process moves forward, it's created a real channel for that engagement everyone wanted to actually be realized. And then finally, it's an opportunity for alignment. All of the stakeholders are together at a table in a micro version at one school, really making sure that we're on the same page about the goals and the behavior and the way that we do things in school and out of school. On the family and community engagement, you think about differentiated instruction. For me, I've thought a lot about differentiated family engagement. So how do you have different ways to get to different families so that everyone has belonging and a place in the school? And this started when Missy shared with me an article, Beyond the Bake Sale, and how we can go, even in schools that already have great parent engagement, to deeper and broader engagement. And I've seen that in this work and really been amazed at how an idea that we've talked about so much at YOU and elsewhere in the community is really taking shape. And then finally, helping to create a community engagement system and infrastructure was a core part of the strategic plan. And it's something that when you'll hear about what's happened at Shoot, you can really map the needs and have the families in a representative fashion at the school taking the leadership in really identifying, mapping, and helping to matchmake. So I want to stop talking there because we have much better people to tell this story, and I will turn it over to the principal, and then you'll hear from parents, and Mr. Mack has been an absolutely amazing partner to learn alongside and to see in this work. And so I'll pass you the baton here.
I think you get to hold that. I'm not sure if I'm the better storyteller or not. I don't know where we're at in the process here. In terms of the progress we've been able to make at Shoot with the community schools, it has been, I would just say, very eye-opening. You can see from when we've had year 1 to year 2, the number of parent leaders that we've had has gone from 7 parents who went through the Kofi program with us in a training format to the point where they became trainers of the next group, and the group expanded to 17 this year. And I'm kind of jumping around. I have some notes for things, and as usual, when I start talking in various venues, I kind of move off of the script pretty quick. It has been absolutely eye-opening to see what has happened with the group that has worked at Shoot, not only with the community schools manager who has set all this up and worked from the grassroots level, but to see the parents. And I have to say, when Ms. Carpenter first came to Shoot, and we talked about what was going on, and I said I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity and I would support it, and I knew we were going to have some things that may be bumps in the road, but we wouldn't let that shut us down, and we would always keep moving because it was what was best for the Shoot family and for the kids at Shoot and the parents at Shoot. I thought I had a pretty good rapport with the parents. And I still think that I do, but I have to tell you that having seen the parent program, I had no idea how good it could be. I had no idea what it meant to have a group that is not necessarily as represented as you wanted it to be, but when there were people who were designing activities that reached out to make them feel empowered. Some of the things that I've talked about throughout this, and even last week when I was asked about it, are the capacity that we're starting to build with an expanded parent base. It's not just PTA. As great as PTA and as wonderfully supportive as they are, but this goes beyond that. It starts to bring more people in to the discussion of things that need to happen at Shoot, whether it's a wellness program, which they put on last spring as one of their first initiatives, where they had over 70 people come in and be part of the wellness day that was going on, to the evening parents, where This group expanded because, especially with the two ladies to my right, who I've taken to calling the ladies of shoot, as they are always around now, it was amazing because they reached out personally to invite families who may not have always felt like I needed to be there and I needed to be part of. They were always there for supporting what was going on with their kids, if it was academics, if there were things going on. But this was different. This was going above and beyond and being part of something more than just that piece to it. And so really where we've kind of gotten to is we've built the capacity, we've empowered this group of parents to be an integral part of what goes on at Shoot, and it's impacted. That's the biggest piece to me, is that it's impacted the home life of the kids. The kids are staying when there's the evening time. They have met, my goodness, 36 nights, I believe, this year at school to this point. And the kids are staying, and the kids are involved in activities through that time. And it's really been just exceptional to see what's come from it. The impact it has on the responsibility of the kids as they're helping out with various things, and just the influence it's had over kids and their vantage point of what it means to be part of Shoot, not only in terms of how they carry themselves, but in terms of their education and what they do. So it's been just absolutely eye-opening for me, and I thought we were in a pretty good place to begin with. And then you can see the other things that are there, the 94 kids who are in the vision clinic. We had 0 when this started in terms of kids getting free glasses. We had 0. We didn't have anything. We had vision and hearing screening, but we didn't have anything happening to get that turned around in a timely process that we were reaching out to the parents to get that going. So that's been tremendous. Obviously, the number of volunteers has increased. You look at the different things that just literally we started with a Healthy Kids Market this past week, and we didn't know where it was going to go. It took some planning as we were in the late fall and winter to kick it off, and we went ahead and decided we would try it this year to see. And we figured, we'll reach out, we'll see what we get. We had over 312 people come through the door. We had upwards of 60 plus families who took away things from the market, and that was all due to the organization and efforts of Ms. LeDuc, who is our community schools manager. And I shouldn't say oddly enough, of course, the parents who were part of this program were there helping with it. Again, including the two ladies to my right. So it really has been something to see as it's gone along. I can only tell you that the kind of, again, jumping around a little bit to this, is that I've had a couple of schools reach out to me and ask me, hey, we'd like to get that at our school too. What do you think about that? And what I have simply stated is, you better have somebody who's overseeing it, because it's not going to be the principal. I can't really take credit for much other than trying to support it as best I can. I don't attend every one of the meetings that these ladies have together, and the fathers who have been in attendance at the meetings. It is really through the community schools process and through the community schools manager, formerly Ms. Carpenter and now Ms. LeDuc, that they have overseen it, set it up, and kept it going and kept it thriving. And I just have to say, it really is, it's a phenomenal thing that is taking place for us at Shoot.
Hi, once again, I'm Liz Avery Hart. I'm a Parents on a Mission parent leader at Shoot Middle School.
And I am Shannon Watson. I am a Shoot parent as well as a Parents on a Mission, also known as POM, parent and parent leader.
I would just like to give a brief overview of Parents on a Mission. Parents on a Mission was cultivated about a year ago under the SFT training, which is the self-family team model. We started off setting goals for ourselves, which is mainly important when it comes to dealing with your family and team. If you don't have yourself in line, you will be not much of help to yourself, family, or your team. So we started under this model, the self-family team, for about a year. And we set goals for ourselves, our family, and most importantly, the team, which is the parents and the community. And one of the goals that the team wanted to accomplish was eat fit, get fit, a healthy kids program, a healthy program, which Mr. Mack just mentioned, where, we were concerned about the health in the community. And from that, we developed a cookbook, and we developed steps to go by to make sure you're staying healthy. And now we're in our second year where we're training parents ourselves, and we're continuing to grow the team and focus on more bigger goals that we have in common as parents. And through that, we came up with a mission statement.
Okay. So basically, it is our mission to come as a group. Within that group, we are a network of parent leaders connecting families, schools, and community by lifting our voices to strengthen, empower, and cultivate a healthier, diverse, and family-friendly environment. So now, a question that a lot of people are wondering is why or how POM works, which is Parents on a Mission, and how or why POM is special. It's very simple, by living through our mission. So with that in mind, POM parents have actually a sense of belonging within the school and the community because we form connections, well, first of all, relationships with one another. We build trust in those relationships with one another because it's a personal level as well as family, and then, as Ms. Avery Hart was saying, the team. And in order for us to commit and fulfill our goals, we have to come together. We make tremendous connections within the community with the YMCA, aldermen. It's so many, I just can't list them all right now. And also by hosting events that we host and attending events, doing outreach and things like that, we meet new people, make positive connections completely all the time. We do gain wisdom from this, I would say, with wisdom of self, wisdom of others, and just the general life. We all walk away every meeting with support, with just knowing that we have support from other parents as well as Mr. Mack, Missy, everyone, YOU staff. Just, it basically gives the parents, like I said in our mission statement, a voice to express our concerns and just any general comments. Everything is not just a concern, just things that we see and just want to put out there. What else? And pretty much we all want a better school and a better community. So with us doing that, the most unique factor of it all is our group that we formed, which is POM, and then the recruitment that we pulled in with more parents this year that passed, that actually graduated from the SFT. It's given us more space for parent involvement, but not like, it's structured, but not like, I don't know the word for it, but it's just giving us more space where we can be more flexible maybe and more open, and set our goals and accomplish them, throughout the community. And pretty much it.
Yes, and this matters because it's a group of parents coming together, learning from each other, learning about resources. We're building upon a toolbox of resources to come together. It also matters because it affects our children. They see us being leaders, and they also want to participate in, being productive in our community. I'll give an example, as I always give with my son, one of my sons. Every time I do laundry, he walks around with pockets full of paper. And I say, why do you have all this paper? He said, because I can't litter in the community. This is our community. I want to do what you guys are doing. So, it really affects our children. They want to give back. They want to do the things that we're doing. And it also mattered because, as Ms. Shannon said, Ms. Watson, that it allows us as parents to lift our voices and, and come together with the concerns of everybody. It's wonderful because You never know that when you sit down with these group of parents that you have all these concerns and everybody can come together with a solution to the bigger problem. And, you know, it's funny how, you know, when you sit down and, you know, like I have 3 boys, Miss Watson have boys, and it is funny how, you know, we can relate to stories of raising boys, which is important to keeping the community productive. Our children are our community. We are our community. That's why this matters to us. And it also matters because, as Mr. Mack mentioned, as Missy mentioned, that, like, for instance, it gives us a sense of belonging. When we were at the Healthy Kids Market, parents came in, they noticed who we were, and it made them feel more comfortable, which made us all feel comfortable. So, you know, it matters for many reasons. Thank you.
Good.
So hopefully that gives you just a bit of an idea of what's been happening at Shoot. I'm just going to quickly back up to, even though I could stare at these pictures all day, just very quickly, this is a very high level of what's happened over the last year. You've heard in great depth about what's gone on with the parent leadership development, and Mr. McCollum pointed out a couple of the partnerships. In the papers that we sent around in advance, there's a little bit more depth to some of the partnerships that we've developed. We've brought in 7 new partners. We've had a grandparent support network develop. There's been lots of things that we've tried. I think the longest lasting will be, obviously the parent leadership work will be long term, but the Vision Clinic and the Healthy Kids Market and the grandparent support network are the ones that seem to really fit the strongest need at Shoot. And so kind of working off of that, we sort of put some projections up there. I expect that the impact will be much larger than what we have up here for years 2 to 4, and 4 to 6. But just to kind of give a sense of how we expect the multiplier effect to develop, as we have a community school manager working with Mr. McCollum, working with the parent leaders, and developing a community school action team, what you'll see is stronger infrastructure being put in place to support really strong programs, services, and partnerships that are directly connected and matched with need. And that, as Liz pointed out, will have a sense of belonging and a sense of ownership in the community that benefits from them. So that is on its way. And so just very quickly, what's next is that we hope to build on this pilot into this new phase of development where we come to this sort of larger plan at the school level. And then sort of looking past Shoot into the future for YOU, District 65, and the Leadership Council to come back together over the next year to put together a more specific evaluation plan for Shoot, now that we've built the capacity, a more robust logic model for all Evanston community schools now and in our dreams, and plans for where to grow, why, and when, developing supportive policies, and a fundraising plan. And so really what we're here to ask for today is your continued support, sort of for your enthusiasm for how excited we are for what's been going on at Shoot, and your continued support for growing it over the next year. And then also for District 65 to really co-plan and partner hand in hand with YOU and the Leadership Council to do this sort of list over the next year, with the hope that in the 16-17 school year we might be prepared to look at additional school sites. So thank you. We'll take questions.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you and tell you that we spend a lot of time here talking about community engagement, parent engagement, and community partnerships. And this is one of the most powerful examples I've seen of those 3 coming together, and the sum of the parts is really amazing. So thank you for telling your stories and for filling us in on the details. And then I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions from the group here.
Yes.
Also some reflections from 2 of our board members who've been involved in the planning and the leadership council.
I just want to thank you all for coming out. I'm going to leave it up to the board. I'm sure Candace will have more to say, but I appreciate the partnership with YOU, with Foundation 65, with Family Focus, with the YMCA, And I really appreciate shoot leaders coming out tonight and hearing from Pong and hearing from Mr. Mack, and hearing from you guys what's actually happening on the ground illuminates it all to us. I think this is, I will say I think this is incredibly important moving forward in terms of how it fits into the strategic plan.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the reasons I sadly go off the board next week, but I feel like it actually is a kind of, we've been working on this, and I'm really very hopeful for to see the role that not only it plays in shoot, but future schools. And I know it will, because it's integrated so well within what the goals are in the strategic plan.
I was going to say very much the same thing. I think, to me, having you talk tonight really helps me have the plan come alive. The strategic plan is specifically around, where we talk about new and different opportunities to engage and what parents as partners means, how we can expand that in our district. And it's, it's integral to all that we do, having that connection between the home and the school, and the trust that you're building with the school through your sense of ownership, I think is going to pay dividends. It will pay dividends for your children, it will pay dividends for their friends, it'll pay dividends for the children that come after them. And so I thank you all, especially the two ladies right there, for being the beginning of what is going to be an amazing thing, as well as, the folks at Shoot. And having just joined the Leadership Council, as Katie was transitioning, this has been such a phenomenal experience this year, working with Casey, with Diane, with the other members of the Leadership Council, because it's so clear that we all are on the same page about how transformational this can be. And it will take some commitment, it will take time, and it's hard work. But it can be truly transformational for something that we've talked about, we continue to talk about being critical and important for us, and having a different tool in our toolbox, and a really effective tool to go at it is really refreshing and inspiring. So thanks.
Can I just add one thing to that? When you say that pays dividends, everything you said is so true. It pays dividends all around. And I think one of the things I always forget is also pays dividends for the community. And that part, just hearing the story about your son and keeping all the paper in his pocket, that pays dividends. It's educational, but it pays dividends for for our community. And seeing these partners here and talking, this is collective impact, right here. And so, leading the way.
I am so excited that you're here and sharing all of this. I have a really deeply held belief that public education is the most important institution we have in our country at all levels, pre-K through college. And we have to demonstrate to the country that we can make it work in Evanston. I have friends who have worked in community school programs, large community school initiatives that you're building toward. And I have seen how successful some of those schools have become, largely because of the community schools efforts. So I'm really enthusiastic about where this is heading. All the strategic alignment they mentioned is absolutely there. And in contrast to the conversation we were having at the beginning of the meeting about reducing resources, in these tough times, we're actually getting an injection of resources in a way that we didn't have, and for communities that need it. And so that's really exciting. That's something to celebrate. And it's also, I think, it demonstrates the model that we have to be looking at as a board. We can't continue to run the district as we have always. We need to find great partners, and it's fantastic to see three of our most important partners at the table. Foundation 65, the Y, and obviously YOU. So I'm just really excited about that. I do actually have a question to ask, and that is, you talked about expansion, and I know there's a lot to think through with that. I am curious if you have in mind targeting a K-5 potential expansion or if you're looking at continuing at the middle school level.
I'm going to turn the question over to Missy. I just want to say how much we value the partnership. Hearing all of you just reminded me of conversations I have with my peers who lead agencies in the city and beyond, and the question they always pose is, how are you able to get such buy-in? And what I tell them is we start with it. Like, this is such a shared vision, and the people in our school district think beyond the, academic piece. And just hearing your voices really is a testament to why I think we're making the progress that we are. You read this, beyond the bake sale, and what it says is you have to convince people that you need to go beyond. And starting with a group that recognizes that and is eagerly asking what the tools are, is, I think, just a huge part of the success. So I just want to thank you and Candace and Katie for being a part of this, even though you happen to be sitting on that side while you usually sit with us and Dr. Gordon and John and others. So thank you, and I will actually turn the hard question over to my colleague now.
That hard.
And anyone from the Leadership Council, feel free to chime in. The answer is yes, and meaning that that all options are open at this moment, and sort of what we're here today to ask is for us to plan together. How we know what the right age level is, what the right next school, is it feeder, is it, and that's really something to plan together over the next year. I know the Leadership Council has spent some time looking at what other communities have done, and the truth is it sort of varies community by community. So certainly there are advantages to doing a like school, so continuing with middle schools because we know what happens in a middle school, in a community school, or to go with a feeder pattern because of how the family population, we can sort of work with the whole family across the spectrum, or maybe there's particular schools with special, particular levels of need that need to be addressed. So that's really something we hope to work on together over the next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to echo the comments, and first of all, thank the colleagues and friends from Shoot. It's really great to hear and absorb the impact that this is having on your lives and the lives of your kids, and so thank you for your leadership on that. And then to each of our community partners, we're looking forward, along with the example from Shoot, really to drive us to dig in deep and to try to get to some of the answers that you're posing. And again, without putting the clouds over us, but the cloud of financial concerns puts a challenge for how do we actually leverage the great commitment that we have, and how do we move forward, and how do we remain visionary in this. But the remaining visionary starts with the two of you, and driving us to do what's right by our children and what's right by our schools. And so just as a voice from the administration, we're looking forward to rolling up our sleeves at the table and figuring out where we go from here and how we move forward.
Yeah. And when do we expect to bring you back and hear more about the pilot? I just started getting a timeline for the goals you're setting for Shoot and beyond.
When would you like to hear from
Oh,
us? Yeah, I mean, I think so far we've been coming yearly, sort of at the end of the year, but this coming year being both the last pilot year at Shoot and as a sort of planning year for the future. I mean, we'd love to come back in the fall with updates, if that sounds right.
I think that would be helpful and keep us all alive and present in our planning. Great. So we'll see you in the fall. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. We all live. Yes.
Okay. Now we're on to our math acceleration update, and Paul.
Yeah, let me kick this off and then pass the baton over to Jess. When we last considered the mathematics acceleration, the board asked for several different questions for us to follow through on. And so what we're going to present tonight are the actions that we can take in the immediate time period, and looking forward to how we actually do deeper dives in some of the areas that you asked. So it's a combination of how we're responding to some of the concerns and issues that you raised initially, and then where do we go from there? And with that, Jess, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Paul. And thanks to all of you for allowing me the opportunity on April 13th to be able to share with you the D65 mathematics updates that we all worked so hard on. And there was a lot of great feedback, and as Paul mentioned, the opportunity today to be able to share the work that we've done on some of these items. So we're going to basically parse it out into two major parts, and one is the items that we've addressed today or up to this point, and items for future consideration. And so one of the major pieces that that we really spent some time on was the communications to families piece. There was a memo that we have drafted that I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide. There's also a family packet that was created, and the family packet was essentially adapted from the April 13 memo so that it was packaged in a way that was able to be navigable by parents and to be used and understood. And then thirdly, we worked on developing a D65 website page to be able to be a one-stop shop of, the information that folks might want to know about the work we're doing around mathematics acceleration. So a little deeper into the memo to parents, there is a one-pager essentially for parents of students in K through 4, and then a separate one-pager for parents of students in Math 5 through 7. We're going to work with principals to have it sent out to families by the end of this week. And essentially what we wanted to be able to do was be able to provide high-level information on the course placement process, the instruments and the corresponding dates by when those instruments would be used or administered, and then to reference the website for more detail. Important to be able to get, when we think about the complex nature of what I shared 2 weeks ago, information out to parents in a way that wasn't, here's a 24-page document, but rather was the high level of what parents would be helpful for them to understand the work that we're doing moving forward. So going to the website, we're really excited about this. So my thanks to Melissa, if you're out there, for helping with this. Essentially, this is the one-stop shop where we're trying to essentially provide the information to our community. We even thought so much as to develop a unique URL for it, which is district65.net/mathplacementinfo, as a way to easily get to the information versus having to type out some very long extraneous ID.953, whatever it ends up being. So in this website, you'll find the family packet that I mentioned earlier, as well as other important information that a parent might want to know, or any staff member or anyone else would want to know for that matter. The appeals process was something that was asked for a little more detail on that. And so the family packet that I referenced earlier has the updates and the articulation of that. The next slide essentially provides more of the detail on that. And that is that on the week of June 8th, the math placement letters will go out, and it'll include a link for parents to be able to opt to appeal if they wish. And during that process, a parent or guardian may opt for their child to retake the MAP and/or the qualifying exam. So important to notice this balance, this really interesting balance and very important balance of making sure that we're able to think very intentionally about how we're supporting our schools in making placement decisions in a timely fashion to inform the right kinds of moves for making programming decisions, as well as for making staff decisions as well. So that really was an important factor in this timeline. So on June 18th is the deadline for submitting the placement appeals, which includes the option to register for the retake if that is so desired. The 24th or the 27th are options for parents to take either of the retake opportunities, and then by the week of July 13th, final placement letters would be sent to families of students. It's important to note in the idea of what we're trying to do that if a student opts to, or if a parent opts for their child to retake the MAP or the qualifying exam, that the better of the two scores versus in the original or the retake will be used towards placement decisions. The idea is, similar to SAT, where the student can take the better of several administrations. So essentially, the process map that I shared with 2 weeks ago has been updated to reflect some of the detail that was in the aforementioned slide. Essentially, the decision point that ends up being when a parent, if a parent opts to retake the MAP and/or qualifying exam, is the idea that the scores end up getting recalculated based off of the better of two scores. And if a student meets the minimum benchmark, they're placed in the advanced math course. And if the child does not meet the minimum benchmark after the recalculation, then the student is placed in the next level math course, as described in the earlier slide with the timeline pieces. Another action item was some clarification on K3 and the grade 4 piece. And so in the family packet, we've made those updates and tweaked some of the language, but more importantly, the one-page memo that I discussed earlier is going to essentially include the clarification on K3 and Math 4, and that will also be on the website. So items for future consideration include essentially a number of items that we're going to hopefully have ready in our estimated time of completion being October 2015 as a way to report back to the board on analysis of looking deeper at MAP, RIT versus percentile, and other types of analysis. The acceleration results from this year and what that looks like, how that compares over time. Looking more deeply at the Algebra 1 pilot, thinking about what the plan ends up being based off of the feedback that we receive from you, as well as feedback that we'll have from engaging some of our colleagues that are immersed in this work, and present the plan for you in October, and then with the idea that we would review it again in May 2016 against that plan. And then I would say, in the interest of continued improvement and learning continuously from one another, that the work that we're doing around thinking about acceleration and the processes that we've tried to put together in this initial go-round will continue to be refined over time. So these represent the updates that I wanted to share based off of the feedback from you all on the 13th of April. And I want to thank you for your time for giving me the opportunity to share this round.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thanks, Jess. This is very helpful. I just have one question, and that is, based on the discussion we had last time and the concern of the benchmarks, the new benchmarks, and how it might play out with the MAP data, I'm wondering if we really need to have to wait until October for that, because while I totally understand the rest of those and full acceleration results, I think the premise and the ask was, MAP's been taken now, or at least middle schools have taken it. I don't know when the elementary, everybody's taken it, right? I would think we should very sooner rather than later be able to look at those results and just see how it compares to the percentile system that we had before, so we can get directionally some indication of, are we accelerating same? Are we twice then? Are we half then? Versus, by October, there's nothing that we can do about it, at least for this year. So that would, that's kind of my one concern about the next action steps, of whether we could do that before the end of the year.
I had one question, and that was the same one, because I think what I heard the board saying, and I'm glad to hear you echo it, is we want to monitor this to make sure that there's not some dramatic swing before the decisions are finalized. I mean, that's, I don't know, I see Tracy nod, I see Candace nod, I don't know where others are, but we want to make sure that there's not something rolled out that has, whether it's twice as many or half as many, and if there is some sort of dramatic shift like that, we would want to understand, what is that appropriate, right? So I think it's important to have that analysis before, so that because I don't know, in terms of the timing that's being communicated, which I think we all agreed on, I also thought we had agreed on that there would be some modeling done before those decisions were made. And I'm glad that you seem to remember it the same way. And I know Tracy does as well.
They're just being a check-in before to make sure we're on track for where we've been
think
in
that
the
makes
past. Since
sense.
we didn't have any sense of, you all didn't give us a sense of what you thought that would do to the model. We thought we'd check in before you sent the letters out to make sure we hadn't really changed the program's profile dramatically.
I think that makes sense. I think one of the major things to keep into consideration, obviously with the model having been recently shared, is that the map piece is, one of 3 instruments that we're using, and so it essentially garners points towards a total sum. But I get what you're saying.
I think it's more the overall number of kids that would qualify to be accelerated is what, I don't think we're necessarily looking as interested in the percentile rank of the map. It's more what is this whole, the 3 tests together, the 3 benchmarks together produce in terms of numbers. Is it similar or dissimilar from last year, and how much? So that would be what I think we were after.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions?
John, go ahead. You may be saying
I just think we'll just have to take a look at the timing of the qualifying exam and the scoring of the qualifying exam and when we can bring that back to you. And we'll take a look at the board calendar and see if that may require an additional meeting in order to meet that.
Thanks.
I also think, and Jess, we talked about this a little bit, that we'll place these data within the context of the new standards as well. So, I mean, what's an appropriate shift? We may have 20 kids more, 20 kids less, and is that, we need to place a substantive judgment call on whether or not that fits within the standards that we're teaching. So that's part of how we would frame that as well.
Suni?
I just, thanks for the update, and I just want to make for all of our benefits to just keep in mind, I think what a parent at the last time that this was brought up a couple of weeks ago, the time and effort that we've spent in clarifying and putting all the details into this acceleration model. I hope that we will spend at least the same, if not more amount of time working on models to improve instruction for our, 60% of students who aren't meeting college readiness standards. So I hope that we can soon turn our focus to
I
that.
completely agree.
I think that's the expectation. The next time we have a math meeting at the board level, it will be about the younger
Absolutely.
grades and some of our
I
struggling
welcome it.
students. Thank you. Katie, your final word on math, 8 years later.
That's good, Luann.
Okay, all right.
I'll come back next week when it's on the agenda.
Budget update. Paul, we've already done that, haven't we?
I've really done the
okay.
overview that's reflected in the
Yeah,
memo in the
okay.
packet as well.
So our upcoming work, our next meeting is our reorganization.
Can I just actually add one more thing sort of to the budget conversation before we leave it? I would like to make kind of, I don't know if this is really the appropriate time to make the request, but we've, looking back at some of the discussions that we've had at the beginning of the year, and I know we've had for the past several years on the budget, I would like us to, we had talked at the beginning of the year about referendum and referendum dates and what that would look like, but then we kind of trailed off, yet our budget problems haven't trailed off. Either on the operating side or on the capital improvement side. So I would really like to encourage us to start really and substantively thinking about what a referendum might look like, what amounts we're talking about, what that impact would be on families in our community. We need to start having that. We probably should have started having those conversations months ago, but really now is the time to substantively start looking at what that would look like, when we would need to go for an ask, and how we're going to engage the community in that. In some ways, I mean, I know we're talking about doing another citizens budget committee, which is fine, and I think that can all be part and parcel of it, but when we haven't even fully acted on the recommendations of the last citizens budget committee, I wonder if it might be more useful to really start talking proactively, planning out how we're going to deal with these budget problems that we're having, both on the operating side and on the capital side, because the problems aren't going away and our buildings are certainly not getting younger. So
I'm only looking to Richard because I imagine this will land in finance.
It will. And I think, we've been really proactive. We've had a lot of conversations very specifically about capital needs. I mean, I know that you've participated in many of those conversations. We've mapped out some of our, highest priority. I think we had 3 tiers of priorities very specifically. Certainly for the operating referendum, we had conversations. I think they were oriented toward, were we considering something for this last election cycle? And when there was a determination that we needed to first have the strategic plan in place so that we could then make even more specific decisions. Some proposals had been put forth, but we wanted to make sure that they were all in alignment with the strategic plan. That is the intention. Now that the strategic plan was voted on, I guess it's been 4 weeks ago. And the task force is part of that process to identify where there are still opportunities for cuts. So I think we're aligned, and
I just want to make sure, we looked at, if we're going to go to referendum next year, what the dates that we would have to, approve it by. I would just encourage us not to wait until the last minute.
We won't wait till the last minute.
The most amount of time to really, everything that I've looked at that looks at what a successful referendum looks like is time. Start planning 12 to 18 months out. And so we're obviously on the very short end of that, so.
Well, there has been a lot of legwork done. So you're right, we would be 12 months-ish out at this point if it were, next year, but that we will absolutely be talking about that. I imagine most months from here on out to decide if that's what, we're going to do, if that's what the board is going to end up recommending.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Richard. Okay, we're on to our committee. Our next meeting is the reorganization meeting on May 4th, next week, when we will bring in our new board member, Jennifer, and say goodbye to Katie. Committee reports. Our joint 65202 committee was postponed last week till after the joint calendar committee, so I imagine we have not yet rescheduled that, but we'll do that soon. The next finance committee meeting, Richard, is the 11th. Park advisory committee.
Yeah, I'd actually like to give a little bit of an update on this because there was the Park Long Range Planning Committee, which held its last meeting last week. And there will be some recommendations coming out of that committee that met for 18 months. And those will be shared with the Park Advisory Board on May 5th. And I have a happy report coming out of the Long Range Planning Committee that we have some really solid recommendations for next year. They are not for implementation for next year, except for maybe 1 or 2 smaller things, but really for planning. So just some programmatic recommendations, some things related to finance, things around marketing and communications about park and such. So those will be presented on May 5th. And I'm really happy to report that District 202 brought a programmatic option to the table at the last meeting that on top of the proposal by District 65, both of those would expand the focus of park in some new and exciting ways that I think people will be really excited about. So both of those will be coming on May 5th. And I really do want to acknowledge Joyce Bartz, who is not here tonight. She really persisted throughout this process, and in particular when there was a change in the committee composition and the facilitator who had been working with us no longer was working with us, Joyce really stepped in to provide leadership. So I just want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge Mary Brown and Kathy, who really spent a lot of time looking at financial impact and I think they're still doing some analysis at this point based on the last conversation, but there was a lot of effort put into that. So while we're in this public forum, I just want to say that. And the last thing is, Adila, I think we had requested that that Park Advisory Board meeting be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act so that more than 2 board members could attend if they wanted to. So if we can just make sure that does occur, I would appreciate that. Yes, Ms. Bailey.
I do have a question. The meeting's next Tuesday morning? Or what did you say?
It is,
Evening.
It's May 5th in the...
Evening.
At 6 p.m.
At night, yeah, it's at night.
Sometimes
That will be after you're off the board.
I know, but
She can still go.
I can still go.
You can,
But
because it's a public meeting.
It's a public meeting. But I might not. But I do really care about getting the information out that the meeting's happening, that it's public, not just here, like through all the people who came. I'm just thinking of where it's going to be posted and how else it can get out. I'm sure.
That's a great idea. Because of the people that came and
Yeah,
spoke
so
to the boards about it.
to the 65
That's a really
and
good
I always
idea.
like when there's follow-up, and there's been so many people concerned. I know that, Marilyn, she could probably get information out too. There might be listserv, or even if it's just, I don't know, Melissa's not here, but there's got to be ways to get it out.
What time is the meeting?
It's in the evening.
It's at 6
It's
p.m.
Mary's saying 6, so she's good with numbers. We'll say 6.
We can make sure that Marlene distributes the information, and we'll post it formally.
And could you ask 65 too?
202.
202.
Okay, that's really assigned. Forget what your board drawn. Yeah, 202 as well.
Okay.
Jeez. Thank you. Thanks, Richard, for that update.
Thanks, Richard.
Yes.
It's nice to have good follow-up. I mean,
This is fantastic. We're happy to hear that. The policy committee, Suni?
Yeah, we have a meeting coming up next month. Dr. Gordon and I will be meeting this week to sort of talk about what will be on the agenda of that. I know one thing that we will likely be talking about is board calendar issues and meeting schedules. Anything else that people want to put on that agenda, please let me know. I have the next update too, Wellness Council. The Wellness Council had its last meeting for the school year on April 14th, actually, which I unfortunately couldn't attend because I was in Springfield that day. But we will resume meeting again in the fall.
Okay, it looks like the week of May 6th is a busy one because Claudia's not here, but the next city school liaison meeting will be the 6th?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what time.
5:30, I believe.
And it's here.
It's usually 5:30.
Okay. And then the Head Start.
Yes, there's a memo in the packet. I don't have anything additional to report.
If there's anyone from the public who would like to address the board, we now have informal presentations from the public. Sure.
Hi, my name is Sue Ferrugia Sherman. I wanted to respond to some of the comments that were made today, in particular around the assistant principal position at Kingsley, probably not surprising. I am a mother of 2 children at Kingsley, a 5th grade boy and a 3rd grade girl. I am also the assistant vice provost for undergraduate affairs at UIC, and I tell you this because I truly understand the very hard decisions you're having to make. We too are also under a lot of budget pressures at UIC, so I do get this. But I think that what I also understand is that with all budget issues that there are always choices, and that choices were made. And I think that, and that was clear when the statements were made about the different categories, about what was kept and what wasn't kept. And I would encourage that there be conversations with parents around what are our priorities and what are our values. And I think had that conversation occurred, you may have come to a different decision about that. I did want to comment about a couple other things. While I appreciate that you had to kind of speak on the spot, I wrote all of this during the last 45 minutes or so. I think a fundamental question was not really answered, which is, why Kingsley? And thinking about that, and kind of as a data person, I've spent the last 24 hours or so crunching numbers. And what I've come up with is that it really shouldn't be Kingsley. And I just want to, because I know there's not a lot of time, but to talk through really a very fundamental issue of why it should not be Kingsley. And the major reason is that Kingsley fares the worst on educational disparities. So you may or may not have looked at this, but I spent some time looking at the ISAT data, and what became very consistently clear is that our educational disparities between black and white students is the worst out of all the schools, and it's growing. So we see this in reading, that our gap is getting bigger, and we have, out of the 12 elementary schools that I looked at in our district, we have the worst overall scores over the last year, and our gap is getting worse. We see a similar pattern for math and for science. And I think that by taking away the resources that we have in the school, in particular with the assistant principal, that the potential progress that we've made in the last couple of years is going to be eroded. I really have to say, I find it amazing, the decreases in suspensions that's happening. That's fantastic, and I think it really is showing that the district is on the right track. But I'm very concerned that this progress is going to be decreased and really be for naught if we don't address having, sorry, I'm a little nervous, that I think that we're going to, I'm concerned that this, very quickly, I am concerned that this progress is in part at least due to the assistant principals that have been put into the schools, and that if we don't have this continued resource, we're going to see a decrease in the behavioral gains we made. And we also know very clearly from evidence that many behavior problems come from students not being academically successful in school, and as we heard about not feeling that they belong in school and that school is important for them. And so I very much encourage you to reconsider the choices that you've made, and to give the community a chance to help solve the problems that we face. We really, as you've seen by all the parents who are here tonight, we really see this as our challenge, our community, and I urge you to allow us to work together to make that happen.
Thank you. Anyone else from the Kingsley community?
Hi, my name is Sarah Hall. I have a third grader at Kingsley, and I am an associate dean for academic affairs also at UIC, where, as Sue already mentioned, we feel the exact same budget pressures and stresses as public schools in the state of Illinois do. And I just wanted to share some of my observations about what has worked for us and to offer up our community engagement, and to also just pose a question about what the limits are on the board's engagement and the school district's engagement in lobbying, and or even I appreciated the reference to referendums. Everyone in the state university system, from the board of trustees to top administrators to student government to students from our classrooms, has gotten engaged in lobbying and protesting budget cuts that we don't believe in. We collaborate on pushing back on the governor and the legislators, organizing meetings face-to-face with legislators, organizing bus trips to Springfield. Those of us who have been able to come here tonight away from our families and our jobs are in a very privileged position of being able to speak up not just for ourselves, but for our whole community. We're not here to represent and protect just our own children, but as Sue mentioned, the entire community that we've committed to by being in the Kingsley district. We've chosen to be a part of a school community that actively strives to overcome disparities in access and success, and we're willing to work with you to push back and to make the human costs of these cuts clear to the people above you who are cutting our resources And that means make visible not just the threats to achievement, but also the positive examples, putting together the data that says that having an assistant principal does in fact cut suspension rates, talking about the community schools and what providing additional resources for that kind of community engagement, the lengths that will go, the dividends that pays, as Candace said. A lot of these cuts, and we see this too in the university system, are based on speculation. None of us knows what our budget is going to look like. And I'm afraid that sometimes when we make these cuts in advance of actually knowing what the budget is, it looks to those in the legislature like we're willing to roll over. We're cutting based on speculation. I think there's still time to push back. And if there isn't, I think we still need to make it clear that we're not happy with this budget and we won't settle for this little in the future. I would consider it our job to work with you to communicate, but we also need you to provide us with the data and the information and the talking points that we can take to our legislators to fight back and help us to educate the governor and the legislature to help us to facilitate our engagement and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important point you raised, and in fact, it was about 2 weeks ago that we did travel to Springfield with District 202 and Paul and several board members and the mayor. And we did meet with legislators and with the governor and expressed our concerns and did have talking points together, but I do think it needs to be a community effort and we can't do this alone, and we need to get the information out there so we can ask you to help us lobby on our behalf. But the other complication here is that even if we could do something at the state level, we still have a problem at our own level. So we're looking at $6.5 million that would be cut if Senate Bill 1 does go through at this point. But even if it doesn't go through, we still have a $5 million deficit in 2 years. So unfortunately, we're not sort of cutting because of speculation about what's happening with Governor Rauner. It's more the realities of our own district. But I do appreciate the call to action because I think that's incredibly important for our community. So thank you.
Can I add something? Yeah. I just want to speak to the suspension rates too, because that has been a topic that this board has really focused on for the last 2 years. And this was the year that we saw a decline. The assistant principals have been in place we added a few assistant principals 2 years ago. I think, was it 2 years ago? And there was a significant change in board policy and in the expectations set in schools, and that was that alternatives to suspension would be offered. And that was the driver for the reduction in the suspension rate. Not saying that staff on the ground don't have an impact, but because we imposed a requirement that students be offered alternatives to suspension, that really drove the change this year. We saw the change this year. And so I just want that to be clear because it's actually something I think the board is really happy about, because we did see, as Candace pointed out earlier, Black and Latino children were not being offered alternatives to suspension. They were offered at a rate that was 50% compared to their white peers. And a huge reason that we have seen that decrease, and it is enormous, is because of the change that occurred at the beginning of this school year. So I don't know if everyone who was listening was aware of that change, but I want to make sure that people know what a big factor that was in the change.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. If there's no further business before the board, I find this meeting adjourned. Thank you.